All right, welcome to Lab 10, Mid-Latitude Storms, and this is part 3. And I'm not going to walk you through questions 22 or 23. It's done very similar to what you did for the 850 millibar map, except for now you're doing it at a 500 millibar map, which is very, very high altitude at this point, and you're pretty much following the jet stream. So it's a very straightforward part. I'm going to actually pick up with question 24, which talks about the conveyor belt model, and this is how the air is rotating up. And you've observed this doing these exercises. So the 3 different sections to the first part of this lab is to do the different altitudes of the conveyor belt. So you started at the surface and you looked at the storm, one in map form, then in station form, right, with the funky grid that you were looking at. Then you were looking at stuff in the middle, which is the center part of your conveyor belt. That is your 850 millibars, and then your 500 millibar map goes back into jet stream and is going to be flowing along with jet stream, very fast speeds, well into the at least 70 knots in speed, so you're going pretty quick. And question 24 asks you to use the following examples of a cold conveyor belt. Now draw arrows depicting wind direction for the open ovals in figure 10-15, showing the warm, dry conveyor belt. So do not draw anything on page 117. You don't even have to write anything on page 117. You're going to go right to page 118, and you'll see the figure. I'm going to zoom in on it for myself. And there's these funky little open bubbles on the figure. I know my image didn't show very well. And you're going to be drawing sort of a set of arrows to show wind direction. And so the first set of arrows that are right behind the fronts are the ones on the ground. And I can see, since this is the cold front right here, I know that the wind is right behind the cold front. So this is coming from these directions. This one, instead of drawing tails, you're not drawing tails on stations. You're just drawing arrows, like pointing where the weather's going, right? So these are behind and on the surface. So this is where these guys are going. Now these guys are right behind the warm front, which are coming from the south. And so these are coming in this sort of direction, right? These are my arrows. So that's my first set of bubbles. My next set of bubbles are kind of in the middle of my conveyor belt. So they're going to be rotating around my conveyor belt. So all of these guys here below where I just drew that black line are going to be kind of coming into the conveyor belt. And so you're going to use like a judgment call. And I'd say this guy is going to be going like this. And this one kind of like this, because we're trying to loop the conveyor belt, right? And this way. So they're all going to try to run the conveyor belt. And then the last little bubble, which is, there's one kind of under where I wrote my black line, that's going to be following the conveyor belt in the actual jet stream direction, and this one in the jet stream direction. So the way I'm interpreting this is that everything down below here are my surface maps, my zeros. Everything kind of here with my black, these guys are my medium heights of like 500 millibars, and then up here, whoop, and I just flicked my page, sorry, up here is my 250 millibars in here, right? So this is my 250, this is my 500, and this is my surface, meters, 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 give myself units. So that's question 24. And now for question 25. Question 25 asks us to look at the satellite image. So this is a picture of the storm that we've been working with this entire lab. And basically circle broad bands of clouds associated with the warm conveyor belt. Draw the path of dry conveyor belt. Note how this path relates to the cloud patterns shown. So here you're going to be looking at the storm, and the dark colors are actually the storm events in this image, and the light colors are where I'm lacking in storms, so it's kind of opposite my standard set. And in our conveyor belt model, we kind of rotate up, right? And so this is the dry part of my conveyor belt, right? Dry, dry, right? The dry part of my conveyor belt. And this here Kind of rotating around is the wet part, or the storm, part of my conveyor belt model. So we can kind of see it circling around. Pretty easy part of the exercise, right? And if you're going to note for me, because they ask you to note the areas, once again, you can kind of use states. My picture up here, you can't quite make out the states because it's a bad photograph, but I can kind of see Ohio in here. So I can give myself kind of locations, and I see Michigan up here. And if I had a better picture of the map on the lab, I can do it. So I could use some states and give myself some locations, right? And I can say things like Arizona or New Mexico, because they're down in here, right, as my locations to kind of give me a handle of where I'm talking about. So there you go. That's Lab 10. Best of luck completing it.